I should have said no the second John asked. But instead I laughed, because I thought he was joking. We were sitting in my car outside my parents' house, engine still running, both of us just staring at the front door like it was some kind of final boss level. I hadn't been home in months, and the whole reason I came back was already stressful enough. Facing my parents, pretending everything in my life was normal, answering the usual questions. I didn't need this on top of it. You want to what? I finally asked, turning to him. John didn't laugh. That was my first mistake, assuming he would. He just leaned back in the passenger seat, running a hand through his hair like he always did when he was nervous. Pretend to be your boyfriend. I blinked at him. Yeah, no, I heard you. I'm just trying to figure out why you think that's a good idea. Because, he said, looking at me now, more serious than I'd ever seen him. You told me your parents still think you're straight. I hesitated. That alone said enough? John sighed, softer this time. Robert, you've been stressing about this all week. You said they keep asking if you're seeing anyone. This solves it. By lying? I shot back. By simplifying things, he corrected, like that somehow made it better. I let out a breath and rubbed my face. Yeah, because introducing my best friend as my boyfriend won't complicate anything at all. It's just for dinner, he said quickly. One night. I act like your boyfriend, they stop asking questions, and boom, problem solved. I turned to look at him fully now. John had always been the confident one out of the two of us. Taller, broader, the kind of guy who walked into a room and didn't even try to get attention, but got it anyway. Girls loved him. Guys respected him. And me? I was just there. His best friend. Which made this whole thing even more ridiculous. You do realize, I said slowly, this only works if they believe it. They will. And how exactly do you plan on convincing them? I asked, raising an eyebrow. John held my gaze for a second too long, then smirked. That smirk should have been my second warning. Leave that part to me. I groaned immediately. Oh no. No, see, that's exactly what I'm worried about. Relax, he chuckled, already reaching for the door handle. Trust me. I grabbed his arm before he could get out. John! He paused, looking back at me. I don't know what it was. Maybe the nerves, maybe the way everything suddenly felt a little too real, but my grip tightened slightly. You're not gonna do anything stupid, right? For a split second, something in his expression shifted. Gone was the playful confidence. Depends, he said quietly. On what? On how convincing you want this to be. My stomach dropped a little at that. Before I could respond, he gently pulled his arm free, opened the door, and stepped out like nothing just happened. I sat there for a second longer, staring at the steering wheel, already regretting every decision that led me to this moment. Then I followed him. The second we walked in, my mom was already there. Robert, she said, lighting up the second she saw me. And just like that, I was pulled into a hug, all warmth and familiarity, like no time had passed at all. But then, oh, she said, pulling back slightly, her eyes shifting past me. And who is this? I turned. John stepped forward smoothly, like he'd done this 100 times before. Hi, Mrs. Carter, he said with that easy charm of his. I'm John. I could feel my mom analyzing him already. The smile, the posture, the confidence, yeah, he was making a good first impression. Nice to meet you, John, she said warmly. Robert didn't mention you were bringing someone. I opened my mouth. And then John did it. He stepped closer. Not just close, too close. His hand slid casually around my waist. My entire body went rigid. And that's my fault, he said smoothly. I kind of convinced him last minute. I swear my brain short-circuited for a second. Because it wasn't just the words. It was the way his hand rested there. Firm. Natural. Like it belonged. Like he'd done it 1,000 times before. I forced a laugh, trying not to look as thrown off as I felt. Yeah, surprise? My mom's eyes flicked between us. Then, slowly, her smile changed. Not confused. Not shocked. Something else. Oh, she said again, softer this time. And I knew. She got it. She actually believed it. And somehow, that made everything 10 times worse. Because when I glanced at John, he wasn't acting anymore. Or at least, it didn't feel like it. His thumb brushed lightly against my side. Small. Subtle. But very, very real. And that's when I realized this wasn't going to be just one simple dinner. Not even close. Dinner hadn't even started, and I already felt like I was losing control of the situation. John didn't move his hand. That was the first problem. Even as my mom led us inside, even as she kept talking, asking about the drive, about school, about everything, his hand stayed right there on my waist like it was the most natural thing in the world. And the worst part? I couldn't tell if he was doing it for them. Or for himself. Dad's in the living room, my mom said, glancing back at us with that same look. The one that said she was already putting pieces together in her head. Great. Perfect. Exactly what I didn't want. We stepped further inside, and I tried, subtly, to shift away from John. He didn't let me. His grip tightened just slightly, barely noticeable, unless you were me. I shot him a quick look. What are you doing? He didn't even look at me. Just smiled like everything was fine. Like this was fine. Robert! My dad's voice cut through the tension as he stood up from the couch. About time you showed up. I forced a grin. Yeah, I know. Then his eyes landed on John. And just like my mom, there it was. That pause. That quick, silent calculation. Dad, this is… John! John stepped in smoothly, extending his hand. Nice to meet you, sir. Firm handshake. Confident posture. That easy charm again. My dad nodded, clearly approving. Good to meet you. Then his eyes flicked, very briefly, to where John's hand was still resting on my side. And just like that, he knew too. No big reaction. No awkward silence. Just a subtle shift in expression. Like something finally made sense. Dinner's almost ready. My mom called from the kitchen. Why don't you boys sit down? Boys. Plural. Together. I swallowed. This was happening. We barely made it to the couch before I leaned in slightly, keeping my voice low. Okay, what the hell are you doing? I muttered. John leaned back like he didn't have a care in the world. Being convincing. You're overdoing it. Am I? He asked, finally turning his head toward me. And again, that look. Too calm. Too focused. Too real. Yes, I said under my breath. You don't need to. Before I could finish, his hand slid slightly higher on my side. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to make my entire body tense. Relax, he murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. You're the one making it look fake. I stared at him. Because this is fake, John. Something flickered in his eyes at that. Quick. Sharp. Gone just as fast. Right, he said. But it didn't sound convincing. Dinner was worse. Way worse. Because now we were sitting side by side at the table, our knees brushing under it every few seconds, and every time it happened, John didn't move away. Not once. My mom kept smiling like she just unlocked some long-awaited secret. My dad was quieter, but I could feel him watching us. Not in a judgmental way, more like he was trying to figure John out. And John? He was thriving. Answering every question perfectly. Where he worked. What he studied. How we met. That's actually a funny story, he said at one point, glancing at me. I immediately tensed. No, it's not. We met at the gym. He continued anyway. I blinked. We did not meet at the gym. He ignored me. He was struggling with his form on bench press. John went on, completely serious. I figured I'd help before he dropped the bar on himself. My dad laughed. My mom covered a smile. I stared at him. That is not what happened. John finally looked at me, a small grin tugging at his lips. Close enough. I shook my head, but I couldn't stop the tiny smile that slipped through. Because yeah, okay, it wasn't true. But it sounded like us. Easy. Natural. Like we'd always been this way. And that was the problem. Because the more this went on, the less it felt like pretending. Then it happened. It was small. So small no one else would have noticed. But I did. My mom got up to grab something from the kitchen, and my dad followed her, leaving us alone at the table for the first time since we got here. Silence. Heavy. Thick. Different. I exhaled, leaning back slightly. Okay, this is getting out of hand. John didn't respond right away. I glanced at him. And he was already looking at me. Not smiling. Not joking. Just looking. What? I asked, quieter now. He leaned in. Slow. Deliberate. Close enough that I could feel his breath. If I'm overdoing it, he said softly, why haven't you told me to stop? My throat went dry. This is. Because you could, he added. Anytime. He was right. I could have pulled away. I could have told him to back off the second we walked in. I didn't. And he knew it. That realization hit harder than it should have. I started, but the words got stuck somewhere between my brain and my mouth. John's gaze dropped briefly to my lips, then back to my eyes. And for a second, everything else disappeared. The house. My parents. The whole reason we were here. All of it. Gone. You're thinking too much, he murmured. And before I could react, his hand moved. From my side. To my thigh. Firm. Intentional. Not something you could pass off as part of the act. My breath caught. John! Relax, he said again. But this time, it didn't feel like reassurance. It felt like a warning. Because something had definitely shifted. And I wasn't sure we could pretend our way out of it anymore. I froze the second his hand settled on my thigh. Not light. Not accidental. Firm. Like he meant it. John, I said under my breath, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. He didn't move. Didn't even look away. If you react like that, he murmured calm as ever, they're gonna notice. My jaw clenched. Or maybe, I shot back quietly. You could just not do that. For a second, I thought he might actually listen. His fingers flexed slightly against my leg. Then, instead of pulling away, he leaned closer. Then tell me to stop, he said. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because the truth? I didn't know if I wanted him to. And that scared the hell out of me. Everything okay in here? My mom's voice cut in as she walked back into the room. John leaned back instantly. His hand gone. Like it never happened. Yeah, he said smoothly, offering her that same easy smile. Just stealing him for a second. I swallowed, forcing myself to nod. Yeah, all good. Dinner continued like nothing had happened. But everything had. Every glance felt heavier. Every small touch, accidental or not, felt deliberate now. And John? He didn't push like that again. Not in an obvious way. But it didn't matter. Because the tension was already there. And it wasn't going anywhere. By the time dinner ended, I needed air. Hey, I'm gonna step outside for a bit, I said, standing up a little too quickly. My mom gave me a knowing smile. Don't be long. I didn't miss the way her eyes flicked to John. Like she expected him to follow. And of course, he did. I barely made it halfway down the porch steps before I heard the door open behind me. Running away already? John's voice came casual, but there was something underneath it. I exhaled, not turning around yet. Just needed a break. Footsteps behind me. Closer. Then he was there, right beside me again. Too close. Always too close. You're overthinking this, he said. I let out a short laugh. No, I'm reacting appropriately to my best friend suddenly acting like. Like what? He cut in. I turned to face him. Bad idea. Because now he was right there. Close enough that I didn't have to raise my voice. Like this isn't a joke anymore, I finished. Something in his expression shifted again. Not defensive. Not surprised. Just honest. Maybe it's not. That hit harder than anything else he'd said all night. I frowned. What does that mean? He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Really looked this time. Like he was trying to decide how much to say. Or how far to go. You trust me, right? He asked finally. That depends, I said. Should I? A small smirk tugged at his lips, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Always. I shook my head slightly. That's not an answer. No, he admitted. It's not. Silence settled between us again. The kind that wasn't awkward. Just heavy. Charged. John, I said more seriously now. We said this was just for tonight. I know. Then act like it. He stepped closer, closing the small space that was left between us. Maybe I don't want to. My breath caught. You don't, what? You heard me. I stared at him, trying to figure out if this was still part of the act. If he was still playing some version of this stupid plan. But nothing about him felt like he was pretending anymore. That's not how this works, I said, quieter now. Then how does it work, Robert? He asked, his voice low. I didn't have an answer for that. Because the rules had already changed. And I didn't even know when. Do you have any idea? He continued. How long I've had to act like this wasn't a thing? My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? His jaw tightened slightly. You. Me. This. I shook my head immediately. No. No, we're not doing that. Doing what? He challenged. Rewriting everything just because, what? One fake dinner got weird? It didn't get weird, he said. It's always been like this. That's not true. It is, he shot back. You just never let yourself see it. I took a step back. Because suddenly this wasn't controlled anymore. This wasn't planned. This wasn't safe. You're crossing a line, I said. Then stop me. Again. Those same words. And again. I didn't. I just stood there. Heart racing. Mind spinning. Trying to figure out when my best friend stopped acting. And started meaning it. Inside, I could hear my parents moving around. Dishes. Voices. Normal. Everything felt normal in there. Out here? Nothing was. John stepped even closer. And this time, I didn't move back. Tell me to stop, he said quietly. I met his eyes. And for a second, I almost did. I should have. But instead, I don't know if I can. His expression softened. Just a little. Like that was the answer he'd been waiting for. And that was probably the biggest mistake of the night. The second I said it, I knew there was no going back. I don't know if I can. It just slipped out. No filter. No thinking. Just the truth. And the way John looked at me after that. Yeah, he heard it too. Really heard it. For a second, either of us moved. The night air felt heavier somehow, like everything around us had gone still just to watch what happened next. You don't make this easy, he said quietly. I let out a shaky breath. You think you do? A faint smirk touched his lips, but it didn't last. Because this wasn't a joke anymore. Not even a little. Robert, he said softer now, I need to know something. My chest tightened. What? If I kiss you right now? My heart stopped. Are you gonna push me away? There it was. No more pretending. No more. For the act? Just him. Just me. And a line we hadn't crossed yet. I should have said yes. Should have shut it down right there. Protected whatever was left of normal between us. But instead, I hesitated. And that hesitation said everything? John noticed. Of course he did. His eyes flicked between mine, searching, waiting. Yeah, I said finally. But it came out quieter than I meant it to. Less certain. More like a question than an answer. And he caught that too. Yeah, you will? He asked. I swallowed. I should. That was the truth. Just not the whole truth. Something in his expression shifted again. Not disappointment. Not frustration. Something more dangerous. Like he'd just made up his mind. Got it, he said. And before I could process what that meant, he closed the distance. It wasn't rushed. That's what got me. It wasn't impulsive or messy or out of control. It was slow. Intentional. Like he was giving me time to stop him. Every second. Every inch closer. And I didn't. I just stood there. Heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. Watching him. Waiting. Until his hand came up, brushing lightly against my jaw. And then he kissed me. It wasn't aggressive. Wasn't overwhelming. Just warm. Firm. Real. And for a split second, my brain completely shut off. Because this wasn't part of any plan. This wasn't something I could explain away later. This was happening. Actually happening. My best friend, John, was kissing me. And I wasn't stopping him. If anything, I leaned into it. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But enough. Enough for him to feel it. Because the second I did, something in him changed. The kiss deepened. Not too much. Not crossing any lines we couldn't come back from. But enough to make it clear. This wasn't just curiosity. This wasn't just testing. This meant something. To him. And yeah? To me too. When we finally pulled back, it wasn't sudden. It was slow. Reluctant. Like neither of us really wanted to be the one to end it. But eventually, we did. And just stood there. Close. Too close. Breathing the same air. Neither of us speaking. Because what do you even say after that? You didn't push me away, John said quietly. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Yeah, I murmured. I noticed. His thumb brushed lightly along my jaw again. Gentler this time. Like he wasn't sure if he was still allowed to. I didn't move. Didn't stop him. That was answer enough. You realize, I said after a moment, my voice low. This complicates things way more than pretending ever would have. A small huff of laughter left him. Yeah, he admitted. Just a little. I shook my head, but there was no real frustration behind it anymore. Just disbelief. And my parents are inside, I added. Very aware that we're out here together. John glanced toward the door, then back at me. Good. I blinked. Good? He shrugged slightly. Makes it more believable. I stared at him for a second, then let out a quiet laugh. You're unbelievable. Hey, he smirked. This was your idea. It was not my idea to kiss you on my parents' porch. Details. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't stop the small smile tugging at my lips. Because somehow, even after everything that just happened, it still felt like us. Just different. The door creaked open behind us. Everything okay out here? My mom's voice called. We both turned. And I don't know what gave it away. Maybe the way we were standing. Maybe the way either of us moved apart fast enough. Or maybe she just knew. Because her expression softened instantly. Oh, she said again. That same oh from earlier. Only this time It wasn't curiosity. It was confirmation. And just like that, what started as a fake relationship wasn't fake anymore. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. And it wasn't because of the bed, or being back in my old room, or anything like that. It was because of him. Because of what happened on that porch. Because every time I closed my eyes I could still feel it. The way his hand had rested against my jaw. The way he looked at me right before. Yeah. That. I groaned quietly, rolling onto my back and staring at the ceiling. Great. I muttered to myself. This is great. Perfect plan, Robert. Really nailed it. Fake boyfriend. One dinner. That's all this was supposed to be. Now? I kissed my best friend on my parents' porch, and neither of us acted like it was a mistake. I dragged a hand down my face. This was bad. Really bad. A soft knock on my door made me freeze. Robert? My mom's voice came through. I sat up immediately. Yeah? She opened the door just enough to peek in, smiling in that way she does when she knows something I don't want her to know. You left John downstairs, she said. My stomach dropped. He's still here. Well, yes, she said, amused. I wasn't about to send your boyfriend home this late. Boyfriend. Right. Yeah, okay. I'll come down, I said quickly. She lingered for half a second longer, studying me. Then, he seems really good to you. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I didn't. I just nodded, and she smiled again before closing the door. I sat there for a second after she left. Then let out a long breath. Yeah, I murmured to myself. That's the problem. John was in the living room when I came down. Of course he was. Sitting like he belonged there. Like this wasn't weird at all. Like we hadn't just. Yeah. I stopped halfway down the stairs. He looked up. And for a second, neither of us said anything. Because now there was no audience. No act. No reason to pretend. Just us. Hey, he said finally. Casual. Too casual. Hey, I replied, stepping the rest of the way down. I shoved my hands into my pockets, stopping a few feet away from him. Not too close. Definitely not as close as earlier. We should talk, I said. He nodded once. Yeah. We should. Silence again. God, this was already worse than I imagined. So, I started, because apparently I hate myself. That happened? Yeah, he said. Great. Very helpful. Do you want to explain? I asked. John leaned back slightly, watching me. Which part? I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. Oh, I don't know, maybe the part where my best friend suddenly decides to kiss me? His expression didn't change. If you didn't want me to, he said, you would have stopped me. That's not. I stopped myself, exhaling sharply. That's not the point. Then what is? The point is, I said, stepping a little closer without realizing it. This wasn't supposed to be real. And I told you, he replied, voice steady. Maybe it already was. I shook my head. No. You don't get to just say that after the fact. I'm not saying it after, he said. I've been saying it. When? I challenged. All the times you ignored it. That hit. Because yeah, there were moments. Little things I brushed off. The way he looked at me sometimes. The way he'd get just a little too close, then back off like it didn't mean anything. The way I didn't push him away. I swallowed. That doesn't mean anything, I said, but it sounded weaker now. It does to me. That shut me up. Because he wasn't joking. Not even a little. You're serious, I said quietly. Yeah. Since when? He hesitated. Then. Long enough. I let out a breath, looking away for a second. Trying to process that. Trying to process everything. And you thought, I said slowly, This was the right time to bring it up. A small, humorless smile tugged at his lips. Not exactly how I planned it. No, he admitted. But I also didn't plan on you looking at me like that tonight. I frowned. Like what? Like you wanted me to. My chest tightened. That's not. Don't. He cut in, not harsh, but firm. Don't lie about that. Not now. I closed my mouth. Because again, he wasn't wrong. We stood there in silence for a moment. Everything hanging between us. Everything different now. So what? I asked finally. What does this mean? John didn't answer right away. He stepped closer instead. Slow. Careful. Like he was giving me time to move away. I didn't. Means I'm not pretending anymore, he said. My heart started racing again. And me? I asked. His eyes met mine. That's up to you. I hated that answer. Because it meant I actually had to decide. No more hiding behind excuses. No more. It's just for show. Just the truth. And the truth was. I stepped closer. Closing the gap between us. Not all the way. But enough. Enough to make it clear. I don't know what I'm doing, I admitted. John exhaled softly. Yeah, he said. Me either. A small, nervous laugh escaped me. Great. That's reassuring. He smiled slightly. Then, his hand found mine. Not forceful. Not assuming. Just there. Waiting. And this time? I didn't hesitate. I let my fingers slide into his. Yeah. This was definitely not part of the plan. But somehow, it felt more real than anything else that night. We stayed like that for a second. Just standing there, fingers intertwined. Like it was the most normal thing in the world. Which was insane. Because nothing about this was normal. Not us. Not tonight. Not the fact that I was holding my best friend's hand and didn't want to let go. You're thinking again, John said quietly. I huffed a small laugh. Yeah, well, someone has to. He smiled slightly, but his thumb brushed over my hand absent-mindedly. That small, simple touch? It did more to me than anything else that night. Come on, he said after a moment. We can't just stand here all night. Your mom already thinks I'm basically moving in. I groaned. Don't remind me. But I didn't pull my hand away. Not until we heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Then, instinctively, we separated. Too quickly. Too obviously. John noticed. Of course he did. But he didn't say anything. Everything okay? My dad asked, stepping into the living room. Yeah, I said a little too fast. John, on the other hand, was completely relaxed again. Yeah, we were just talking, he added. My dad nodded slowly, looking between us. There was that look again. Not suspicious. Just aware. Well, he said, it's getting late. We set up the guest room, but... He paused slightly. There's only one bed in there. I blinked. John didn't. That's fine, he said easily. I turned to him. That's fine? He shrugged like it was nothing. We've shared worse. Okay, yeah, technically true. Couches. Floors. That one time during a trip when we had to share a tiny motel bed. But this? This was different. And we both knew it. The walk to the guest room felt longer than it should have. Either of us spoke. Not until the door closed behind us. Then, I turned to him immediately. Okay, this is a bad idea. John leaned against the door, arms crossing casually. Which part? All of it, I said. This, us sharing a bed after everything that just... Relax, he cut in, though his tone was softer now. We're not gonna do anything you don't want. That made me pause. Because unlike earlier, there was no teasing in his voice. No pushing. Just truth. And what if I don't know what I want? I asked. He held my gaze. Then we don't do anything. Simple. Clear. No pressure. And somehow, that made it worse. Because now the choice was entirely mine. We got ready for bed in silence. Brushing teeth. Changing. Avoiding eye contact more than we ever had before. It felt stupid. We'd known each other for years. Seen each other at our worst. But now I was suddenly hyper-aware of everything. The way he moved. The way he looked. The way this didn't feel like just John anymore. When we finally got into bed, we stayed on opposite sides. A safe distance. Like that would fix anything. "Good night," I said, staring up at the ceiling. "Night," he replied. Silence. Again. I lasted maybe 5 minutes. "Are you awake?" I muttered. A quiet chuckle. "Yeah. Okay, good. Because this is weird." "Yeah," he agreed. "A little." I turned my head slightly to look at him. Even in the dim light, I could see him already looking at me. Of course he was. "Say something," I said. "Like what?" "I don't know. Something that makes this less, whatever this is." He thought for a second. Then, "You're really bad at pretending." I frowned. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, a small smile in his voice. "Back there? At dinner? You were overthinking everything. Well, sorry for not being used to fake dating my best friend." "Wasn't that fake?" he said quietly. There it was again. That shift. That reminder. I exhaled slowly. "Yeah," I said. "I know." Another stretch of silence. But this one felt different. Less tense. More honest. "You really mean all this?" I asked after a while. "Yeah. No second thoughts?" He hesitated. Then, "Only about whether you're gonna freak out and pretend none of this happened tomorrow." I let out a small breath. "That's fair." "Are you?" he asked. "Am I what? Gonna pretend?" I thought about it. About the kiss. About everything he said. About the way my hand fits so easily in his. "No," I admitted. And I meant it. Something shifted again after that. Subtle. But real. The space between us didn't feel as necessary anymore. Didn't feel as safe. "Robert," he said quietly. "Yeah? Come here." My heart skipped. "That's a terrible idea." "Probably," he agreed. "Then why are you suggesting it?" A small pause. Then, "Because I want to." I swallowed. Every logical part of my brain told me to stay exactly where I was. To keep things simple. To not make this more complicated than it already was. But instead, I moved. Slowly. Closing the distance between us. Not all the way. Just enough. Enough that I could feel his warmth. His presence. His hand found mine again under the covers. Familiar now. Easy. And this time, there was no hesitation at all. "Still wanna pretend this is fake?" he murmured. I let out a quiet breath. "No." And that? That was the most honest thing I'd said all night. I didn't realize how close we were until I shifted slightly and felt his leg brush against mine. Not accidental this time. Not something I could pretend didn't mean anything. We were both facing each other now, close enough that I could see the outline of his face even in the low light. And neither of us moved away. "You okay?" John asked quietly. I nodded, even though he probably couldn't see it clearly. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "You sure?" I let out a small breath. "No." That got a soft huff of laughter out of him. "Yeah," he said. "Same." Something about that made it easier. Like we were both just figuring it out at the same time. No pressure. No expectations. Just whatever this was becoming. "I keep thinking I'm gonna wake up and this'll feel like a mistake," I admitted. John was quiet for a second. Then, "Does it feel like one right now?" I thought about it. About the kiss. About the way my chest felt tight but not in a bad way. About the fact that, despite everything, I didn't want to move back to my side of the bed. No, I said honestly. Then don't overthink tomorrow yet. I huffed softly. You make that sound easy. It's not, he admitted. I'm just choosing not to freak out about it. Must be nice. Not really, he said. I've been freaking out about this for a while. You're just late to the party. I glanced at him. Even in the dark, I could tell he wasn't joking. That hit me again. How long? I asked quietly. A small pause. Long enough that pretending tonight wasn't as hard for me as it should have been. My stomach flipped. John! I'm not saying that to pressure you, he added quickly. Just explaining. I know, I said. And I did. That was the difference now. Nothing he was saying felt like a game anymore. Silence settled again. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Just full. Like there was too much to say, and neither of us knew where to start. So what happens when we leave tomorrow? I asked eventually. Good question. That's not an answer. I know, he said, a faint smile in his voice. I rolled my eyes slightly. You're really helpful tonight. Hey, I'm doing my best. Your best got us into this. And you didn't stop me, he pointed out. Yeah. There it was again. That truth. That I wasn't just dragged into this. I walked into it too. His hand shifted slightly, still holding mine. Thumb brushing over my fingers in slow, absent patterns. It was calming. Grounding. Dangerous, honestly. Because it made this feel too natural. Robert, he said after a moment. Yeah? You can still say no. I frowned slightly. To what? To any of this, he said. To me. I swallowed. And if I don't? His hand tightened just a little. Then we figure it out. Simple. Terrifying. Real. I shifted a little closer without thinking. Not a big movement. Just enough that the space between us wasn't really there anymore. John didn't react right away. But I felt it. The way his breathing changed slightly. The way his fingers tightened around mine. You're making it hard to be patient, he murmured. I let out a quiet breath. You weren't very patient earlier. Yeah, he admitted. That's on me. Another small pause. Then, I won't push you again like that. That mattered more than I expected. Because it meant this. Whatever this was. Wasn't just about what he wanted. It was about me too. I looked at him. Really looked this time. At the guy I'd known for years. The one person who had always been constant. Reliable. Safe. And now? Now he was also the guy who kissed me like he meant it. Who looked at me like this wasn't new, just finally said out loud. Hey, I said quietly. Yeah? If we do this. He didn't interrupt. Didn't rush me. Just waited. We don't mess it up. I finished. A small smile touched his lips. No pressure or anything. I'm serious. I know, he said softly. Me too. There was a moment. One of those quiet, suspended ones where everything feels like it's balancing on something fragile. And then, he moved. Slowly. Carefully. Giving me time to stop him. But this time? I didn't hesitate. Not even a second. The kiss was softer than before. Less surprise. More intention. Like we both knew exactly what we were doing now. No confusion. No pretending. Just us. When we pulled back, I didn't move away. Neither did he. And for the first time all night, everything felt still. In a good way. Yeah, I murmured. Yeah? He asked. I nodded slightly, a small smile forming without me realizing it. Definitely not fake. He smiled back. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of something real. Morning came way too fast. I woke up before my alarm. Before the sunlight fully settled into the room. Before I was ready to deal with any of this. For a second I didn't move. Just laid there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece together what felt like a very real, very vivid dream. Then, I felt it. Warmth. Weight. A hand loosely resting against mine. And just like that, reality hit. Hard. I turned my head slightly. John was still asleep. Close. Closer than we'd been when we fell asleep. At some point during the night, the space between us had disappeared completely. His arm was draped lightly across me, his breathing slow and even, like none of this was complicated at all. Like this was normal. I swallowed. Because part of me wanted to panic. To overthink. To pull away and put everything back into neat, understandable boxes. But another part? The part that remembered everything from last night. Didn't want to move at all. John shifted slightly, his hand tightening for just a second before relaxing again. Then his eyes opened. And immediately landed on me. No confusion. No surprise. Just awareness. "Hey," he said, voice still rough from sleep. "Hey," I replied. We stayed like that for a second. Neither of us pulling away. Neither of us pretending. "You still with me?" he asked quietly. I let out a small breath. "Yeah." A pause. Then, "You." A faint smile touched his lips. "Yeah. Definitely." That should have been awkward. It should have been weird. But it wasn't. Not really. Because everything that could have made it awkward, we already crossed. "We should probably get up," I said after a moment. "Probably." Neither of us moved. I huffed a quiet laugh. "We're really bad at this." "At what?" "Acting normal." He smirked slightly. "Who says we have to?" I rolled my eyes, but I didn't argue. Because honestly, I didn't want to. Eventually, we got up. And yeah, that part was a little awkward. Not in a bad way. Just new. Different. Like we were both aware of everything now, but still figuring out how to exist in it. When we walked downstairs, my parents were already in the kitchen. And the second we walked in, I knew. They knew. Not just suspected. Not just guessed. Knew. It was in the way my mom smiled. Softer than before. More certain. It was in the way my dad nodded at John. Not like he was meeting him anymore. Like he was accepting him. "Morning," my mom said casually. "Morning," we both replied. At the same time. I glanced at John. He glanced back. And just like that, we both smiled. Breakfast was surprisingly normal. No big questions. No awkward conversations. Just small talk. Coffee. Food. And the occasional look my mom gave us when she thought I wouldn't notice. I definitely noticed. At one point, my dad cleared his throat. "So," he said, looking between us, "how long have you two been together?" I nearly choked on my coffee. John didn't miss a beat. "Not as long as we should have been," he said. I shot him a look. He ignored me. My dad nodded slowly, like that answer made perfect sense. My mom just smiled. After breakfast, we stepped outside again. Same porch. Same place, everything changed. Only now? It felt different. Lighter. Real. "Well," I said, leaning against the railing. "That went better than expected." "Yeah," John agreed. A small pause. Then, "So what now?" I asked. He looked at me. Not hesitant. Not unsure. Just steady. "No," he said, stepping closer. "We stop pretending." I exhaled slowly. "Yeah? Yeah." Another step closer. "Unless you want to go back to how things were." I thought about it. About before. Before last night. Before all of this. And for the first time, it didn't feel like enough. "No," I said honestly. I don't. Something in his expression softened. Like that answer mattered more than anything else. His hand found mine again. Natural. Easy. Like it already belonged there. And this time? We didn't let go. Hey, I said after a moment. Yeah? You realize this started as a terrible idea, right? He smirked. Still is. I laughed. Yeah, probably. A small pause. Then, but I don't think I'd change it. He looked at me. Really looked. Good, he said quietly. Me either. And just like that, my best friend wasn't just my best friend anymore. Not fake. Not for show. Not something we had to explain away. Just real.